thanks for tuning in. My name is Jordan Winter, and I'm the digital editor for Commercial Baking. In today's Tech Talk, I'm here with Keith Seiz, ingredient marketing representative for the National Honey Board, and we're going to be talking all things honey. Thanks for joining me today, Keith.
Thanks for having me to talk about my favorite things, honey and honeybees.
I'm looking forward to it. So first, I wanted to get started with this kind of bigger picture of how supporting honey means supporting bee health and bee populations. So Keith, why is that a significant part of being sustainable and kind of protecting our ecosystems?
Definitely. It's a good place to start too, because whenever you think about honey as an ingredient, you can't remove the source. You can't remove honeybees. They play such a large integral role in the creation of honey because they're essentially doing the work. If you look at honey as a natural sweetener, the bees are the one taking the nectar from the flowers, converting it into honey. Where the beekeeper comes in is removing the excess honey that the bees don't need and extracting it, but they're not changing kind of the chemical composition of that honey whatsoever. Undoubtedly, we've had issues with bees in the last 10 years between colony collapse disorder, shrinking forage area, things like that. And beekeepers, for the most part, rely on income from honey to keep healthier bees, to invest in research. So it's really putting that money not only in a great all-natural sweetener that's going to make your products taste better, but is really going to help the sustainability of bees. And whenever you talk about the sustainability of bees, it's really our whole food ecosystem, because through their pollination, honeybees are responsible for 35% of the foods we eat. So it's all this one big chain that using honey in your, whole wheat loaf of bread, using it in a cookie, something like that, really helps sustain our whole food ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. It's all connected, isn't it?
It is. And that's one of the cool things about honey is that, whenever you use it in a bakery food, boy, do you have a great story to tell. The story of the bee, the story of the beekeeper, the story of where that honey comes from. It all makes a much more marketable product, and it's doing good to support the food industry.
I think natural sweeteners are having a really big moment right now. So why is that important to consumers and food manufacturers? And what benefit does honey bring to those preferences?
Yeah, I think, natural sweeteners are important because if you look at any consumer research, one of the first things most consumers say is they're trying to avoid sweeteners. This is really across the board that they're either cutting back. Consumers have gotten it in their head that, this perception that sweeteners equal bad foods, which definitely isn't the case. But it is what it is. So the question is how do you, square that with the fact that consumers love sweet foods? They say they don't want, sweeteners, but we know consumers love those sweet, indulgent foods. Now, the whole topic of natural sweeteners is pretty broad and can mean any number of things, since we know there's no official labeling definition of what natural means and what it can be used for. Where I think honey has the real big advantage and where we have that strong marketing point is what I talked about earlier, is that we're made by bees. We're not chemically manipulated in any way or manufactured. But it all gets down to just wanting a clean label, all natural product, which I think every manufacturer is looking for, even if it is on the indulgent side of the product.
Mm-hmm. And I think simplicity is one of the beautiful parts about honey, but I was surprised to learn that there are more than 300 different varieties in the US alone. Can you speak a little more on that diversity?
Yeah, honey's kind of has to be viewed more like wine. It's all about the terroir. It's where the bees forage for food is what that honey is going to taste like. So if you envision you've got your beehive, if you put it next to an orange grove in Florida, you're going to get orange blossom honey. That is going to have aromatics of jasmine, aromatics of citrus, and it's going to have a little bit of a zing, a little bit of an acidic zing on that honey at the tail end, because the bees are feasting on this orange blossom nectar, which has all these unique minerals, acids, things like that. If you take that same beehive, that same bees, and move it over to, say, a farmer's field in the Midwest that is growing alfalfa, you're going to get alfalfa honey, which is completely different. It's going to be much lighter in color. It's going to have very grassy, almost hay-like notes. And it's going to be a different flavor profile just based on where those exact same bees got their food from. So in the United States, you can find 300 different varietals of honey, each with a different color, flavor, aroma. And then worldwide, you can find 3,000 different honey varietals. Some of them taste like toasted marshmallows. Others taste like wet barnwood. You know, the flavor gamut really runs pretty broad whenever you talk about honey varietals. And again, it's nothing that's been added to those. So whenever you have blueberry honey, it's not like blueberries have been added to that honey. The only reason that's blueberry honey and has that unique flavor and color is because the bees forage for nectar on blueberry blossoms.
That is so interesting. And it seems like all those different flavor profiles just unlock this unlimited potential for food manufacturers, bakeries, especially.
There's definitely some fun things that bakers can do to use those varietals to their advantage.
Wow. And with that variety, it seems like it's not always a tit for tat replacement for, with one kind of honey for another kind of honey, or even a different sweetener for honey.
No, it's something you have to constantly work with. Now, if you're buying massive quantities of honey, say you're putting hundreds of thousands of pounds of honey in a cereal a month, most likely you're going to buy a blended honey. So it's a 100% honey, it's pure honey, but it's just been blended for consistency. With some food manufacturers are going to want a consistent product. But if you are, taking advantage of the varietals and say want to use orange blossom in this cereal, it is something where, can make a difference, because if you buy orange blossom honey from Florida, it's going to actually have different characteristics than orange blossom honey from California, just because the soil is different, the environment is different. It's going to be subtle, but food scientists are trained to catch those subtleties. So there will be differences. So it's never just a one-to-one replacement. And that goes the same with replacing honey for any sweetener, mainly because of the sweetness levels. So honey on average is 1.1 to 1.5 times sweeter than sugar. So because of that, you can lower your overall sweetener systems you use in a product just by using honey, because it is such a intenser sweetener coming from the high levels of fructose in honey. But then honey also has acids in it. So if you're using honey, you also have to think about how those acids may impact kind of the overall flavor, not just from a flavor standpoint, but also from a standpoint is going to help prevent some spoilage on your products, because it is bringing an acid load into the product.
Mhm. That seems important to keep in mind, especially on the commercial side, as we see this really big rise in clean label and
Yeah.
that kind of holistic health angle.
Yeah, one of the biggest benefits of using honey in any bakery food is it's a natural shelf life extender. It's a liquid sweetener that's humectant. If you open a jar of honey and just set it on your countertop, it's going to start pulling in all the moisture from the environment. It's a very humectant ingredient. So if you think about that same process, putting it in a loaf of bread, it's going to pull all the moisture and it's not going to let it go. So it's going to keep a loaf of pan bread, a cookie, it's going to keep it moisture much longer. So it's a great way to naturally extend your shelf life of your products just by putting a little bit of honey in them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the call to action for understanding all of these benefits and bakers saying, hey, I kind of want to add this to some of my products,
Yeah.
how can food manufacturers learn about that process, and what should be their first step in trying to do that?
Yeah, the National Honey Board is great because we are a purely educational representation of the honey industry. So I urge everybody who's interested in using honey to email me at keith@honey.com. And it's my job to work with bakers, large food manufacturers. It's something I do on a daily basis, whether it's in-person meeting or just walking them through formula ideas from a technical standpoint as well to a marketing standpoint about what the consumer preferences are. It's what I do on a daily basis. So reach out to me at keith@honey.com, and I can talk your ear off on why you should be using honey in everything from a donut to a loaf of bread to a pastry.
Amazing. Well, this has been such an incredibly insightful conversation with you, Keith. I really appreciate you joining us for this Tech Talk.
Thanks for having me.